What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the South Asia Men's Space podcast. So today I'm joined by three other people, Gareth, Tanvir, and Raphael. So Tanvir and Raphael I met through men's group, so MenSpeak groups I've been attending. I met them through there. And Gareth, I met over Instagram. So because of a difference in countries, so Gareth is from Australia, whereas Raf, Tanvir, and me are from London, UK. There's a slight bit of difference in the conversation, so you might find bits are edited out, and that's just to make this whole kind of podcast seem more fluid. So nothing major was taken out. It does run smoothly, to be honest, but just in case you are wondering here and there if there's a minor little glitch, that's probably why. But like I said, it should be running smoothly, and I've listened to it once already and it seemed more or less fine. So unless you've really analyzed it and tried to find something wrong with the podcast, then you will probably find it. But otherwise, yeah, it should be fine. So enjoy the podcast. Hope you like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, share it on Spotify if you're listening to it on Spotify. And yeah, I look forward to listening to this podcast. A lot of deep insight into masculinity and other things. And as always, if you're interested or know anyone who is interested in jumping on this podcast, make sure you share this podcast with them and let them know. All they have to do is just contact me on Instagram, on social media, via my email, my website, whatever it is. And yeah, we can get that going as well. But otherwise, enjoy, and I'll see you in the next episode too. Thank you. What's going on, guys? What we'll do is we will go around in a circle, introduce ourselves, and yeah, we'll take it from there. So anyone want to start? Maybe also talk about your current mental health and physical health as well.
I'm happy to go first. Hi everyone, my name is Gareth Shantakumar. All the way based in Australia, so I'm from Perth, WA. And a little bit about me. So I'm 25 years old, from a Sri Lankan background. I've pretty much grown up in Australia my whole life. I currently do a few jobs. I don't really have a career per se. I'm working on things, but a few things I do is I started a organization which works with men and metropolitan high schools called MANA WA. And the goal with that organization is to essentially try to transform what it means to be a healthy man for young people, and also allow conversations around mental health. Beyond that as well, I'm a personal trainer and mindset coach. So I kind of use both avenues to kind of help people to really dive into betterment, be it their own personal mental health and physical health. I think they're all connected. I think personally for me, currently my physical health is well, I could be fitter and healthier as we always can, but I'm quite content with where I am and where I'm going. I definitely make the priority to focus on my physical health. And my mental health is something that I think is a continuous journey. I'm never just going to have a moment where it's always going to be all good. I kind of oscillate. So I think, for myself, at the moment, it's quite well. I've had moments, even yesterday, I kind of had a bit of a dip where I just kind of get triggered from old things from the past. And I think a big game around my mental health is just recognizing triggers and finding those tools and strategies in place to make sure that I'm okay as I move forward with it. So I'm doing well. I definitely take a lot of effort to make sure it's well. I see psychologists every 3 months, friends, coach my partner. And I think that all helps with me staying mentally healthy.
I'll go next. My name's Dragonoff. And yeah, at the moment, overall, I am feeling good. I think this podcast is like, there's so many little things you have to do, like lighting and editing, and every single time I've done it, there's something that goes wrong in terms of lighting. So like on the back of my mind, there's like a little bit of a panic. Even this morning, I was like rushing to get everything perfect, and then I spilled some Coke on the sofa, and I'm like, fuck's sake. And then I need to go clean that out. So like, it's just like little stresses like that, which is a bit annoying. But I guess it's part of the process, right? And I'm learning a lot from it. So like these podcasts is something this podcast is something that's exciting me at the moment. I was thinking about it the other day, and I was like, the conversations I've having with you guys, meeting other people as well, it's exciting, like to see it kind of branching out now. But on the whole, I think I'm feeling good. I've injured myself, so I haven't been able to work out the last 2 weeks as much as I was doing, which was annoying. But at the moment, it's allowed me to kind of step back, and it's been quite nice actually to step back a little bit and reflect on my kind of training goals and what I want to do. And I think it's also made me a bit more disciplined in terms of nutrition, which is more beneficial, I think, because normally I would try and work out 10 times more. So like, because I've had to dial back my actual training, I've had to also be more mindful of what I'm eating, which is actually been quite nice. Um, yeah. And I think mental health wise, I'm in a good place. I think, yeah, I'm in a good place right now. I think work wise, everything is going well. Blips here and there, especially early last week, where I had some triggers that come up. But I did actually end up going to a men's group and kind of solved on the root of what was going on. So that was quite nice. So yeah, on the whole, I'm feeling good.
So hi everyone, my name's Tanvir Arafat. I'm feeling good. Appreciate you inviting me on, Jag. Mental health has been pretty good. I would say it's been a bit of a journey so far. I started studying pharmacy originally, a master's degree in pharmacy, and then I kind of transitioned into more like entrepreneurship and sales. And then I kind of found men's group as I was doing personal development. I read a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. And that's where you mentioned groups and stuff. So I thought I'd give it a try. And yeah, it's been really good to kind of learn and pick up a lot of tools from these groups, how to relate to not only other men, but to women as well in my life and family members and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm glad you brought up health, because health has been quite a big change for me recently. I came back from holiday, I think 2 months ago. I was in Japan, and I had a moment there where I was just like really down on myself. I hadn't really thought about my health or anything like that, and I decided I was going to come back and try like a workout program for rock climbing. So I've been doing that for the last 2 months. I tried to wake up and go to the gym before work. So that was a big shift for me. And that's been going really well. I've lost almost 6 kilos in 2 months, and made a lot of strength gains and stuff like that. But I think overall, having that discipline was a bit of an experiment for me. I kind of was thinking, how I do one thing actually affects everything in my life. So let me try this health thing. Let me try this discipline schedule, and a lot of things have fallen into place since then. It's like nice to have that foundation there of structure, which has really helped me in every area as well, like mentally as well as physically, business wise. So other than that, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I'll go now. Hi, I'm Raphael. I was really glad when you brought this up to do this, Jag. I've been excited to do this. I'm 20 years old. I've been involved in men's groups for about 2 years now. I've been in a group with you, Jag, and you, Tanvir, for almost a year now, and it's been real. We've had a lot of great talks. We've covered a lot of stuff in there. Where I am with my mental health, I experienced some dips about last week. Yeah, and I have a similar problem with you, Gareth, where it is about triggers, it is about things from my past that do come up, and those make me, the word for this, ruminating. I'll ruminate over those for, yeah. One thing I've gotten into from our groups is the metaphors keep the inner child safe. I practice my breathing. I've been practicing how to look after myself. That's been my saga for the past few months now, where I've been trying to take care of just by breathing well. I've been trying to, I've been exercising more, been going to the gym more. I'm definitely getting stronger now. And yeah, I was recently traveling for work, and then I was work to Newcastle, and then I was going back home from Newcastle for a 4-hour train. And then on that 4-hour train, I found myself triggered because I was just standing the whole time. That led to a dip for a bit throughout this week. And then I feel I've picked myself back up from there after just a few days of going through the motions. What really works for me is kind of sitting through it in the silence, or even in a group. I will try to just catch myself in my breath. I come from Indonesia. I'm Indonesian, and I'm really glad you guys. I will talk about maybe some things cultural or some things differences of being somewhere Western. Yeah, but I'm really glad to see you all. That's me.
Sweet. Thank you, guys. I guess there's a few things after speaking to you all, like, that's been on my mind. So we'll try and get through that within the next hour. I guess what popped up in my head I want to kind of do a round on is, as a Asian man, how have you been taught to deal with these triggers that we've been talking about? So when you do get triggered, how have you been taught from a family cultural perspective to deal with those triggers, versus how have you learned is the most best way for you to deal with those triggers? And obviously sometimes culturally you may have learned some good things as well, which is fine. So yeah, so what have you learned culturally, versus what have you found to be the best ways to manage those triggers from your own experiences? Yeah, anyone can go first.
I think that's a great question. I was just thinking as you said that, because I think we all learn from like our parents a lot of things, how we're supposed to be, how we're supposed to deal with adversity, I guess. And so when I think back to my parents and how they handled triggers, the first thing that comes to mind is, I think a lot of times they didn't even know they were triggered. I feel like even with my dad, his instant reaction sometimes was anger, and not really knowing why he was angry or what his needs were, and to be able to communicate his needs clearly in a non-emotional way, in a non-reactive way, and then also communicate that as well. That wasn't a part of the emotional language or landscape of our household at all. I'm from Bangladesh, so my family are Muslim. So my dad also had I think he was the oldest in his family. So I think the way he kind of ran the household was how his dad ran the household, which was with an iron fist, and was like, I'm the head of the family. What I say goes. I'm the provider. And if you don't listen to me, that's a sign of disrespect, or that's challenging my authority, which now I've come to learn, because that kind of, I have to admit, it's kind of spilled over to me with my siblings, where I was like, I have to be the head of the household. I'm the man of the house, or I have to set the rules and the boundaries, which actually just alienated my family from me, because for a lot of times my siblings were just like, okay, well, we're not friends. There's a hierarchy here. And I think a lot of these groups have taught me that there isn't a hierarchy, and triggers and stuff like that are to be communicated. Like Kenny from our groups, he always says boundaries are where you meet people. That's where you meet, because if something's triggered you or upset you, that's a great opportunity for me to communicate that, and for us both to meet somewhere new, and for you to understand, okay, hey, I don't like it when you do this. Can we talk about that and come to a mutual sort of conclusion? So yeah, it's definitely been a massive change, I think, and still a work in progress. But yeah, I'll be interested to know as well how it was for you guys as well growing up.
I'll go next. I think the question is interesting in itself, because I never was taught how to deal with triggers. Just like you, it was all about saw from my parents. It was interesting because it really only noticing that now as a 25-year-old, of all the things I had as a kid. I think, my parents fleeing a war-torn country, their mindset was always about just survival, right? It was about putting food on the table and do whatever it took to make sure me and my sister were safe. They never had the luxury and the privilege to focus on their own mental health or the triggers. So I think a lot of the things that I saw was just getting angry with each other. My parents aren't together anymore. And so I think, when they were married as an unhappy couple, there was a lot of silent treatment. There was a lot of blame, shame, and there was no expression of vulnerability. And so for myself as a young brown person growing up, I've very much modeled that same mindset of like, just keep grinding, just keep working. My problems aren't important enough, especially because I'm living in a Western country. I've got all the things I could ever dream of wanting, right? I learned to invalidate my struggles because they weren't important enough, I guess, from my parents' point of view and their lens. So when I was going to high school, especially throughout my first year of uni, when other stresses came into my life, I just didn't know what to do. I bottled things in. I got angry. I started reenacting the same behaviors with my first girlfriend, where I would do silent treatment. I'd get frustrated and not express how I felt and expect them to read my minds, right? A lot of these games that we were playing, I didn't realize at the time, I don't even realize this now, but it was crazy to see how it made such an impact in my relationships and the way I dealt with stress. I think the best thing that I do nowadays to deal with triggers is through gaining more self-awareness of it. And for me, that looks like journaling. That's been one of the greatest habits I've implemented, because I don't know, like even as men, we kind of think that talking about our feelings is not going to solve anything, but it's crazy how it actually can help. It doesn't fix the solution, but it takes what might be miscued in our brain and put onto paper for us to actually then see it clearer. So this is a practice I've been practicing throughout this whole year. On every Monday, I spend about 30 minutes where I just write down how I feel, whether that's good or whether that's bad. And in doing that, I start to become more aware of when I am getting triggered and therefore take right action moving forward now.
Nice.
I'll go next. Yeah, from my background, a lot of the go-to to any problem was to should it, to say it should be like this, to follow something to a T, to just I'm Indonesian, so my family was Muslim, and a lot of the time, yeah, it's like turn to anything, whether it's turn to prayer, turn to any sort of philosophy, turn to any sort of moral compass. We could just that's just because it's the right thing to do. And when people get triggered, there's just always an answer. So a lot of fixing, a lot of we'll get this all wrapped up. We gotta handle this, any sort of problem that comes up. Yeah, and we're not from a background where everyone is in such a survival mode, but it is a lot. But there was personally, there's a lot of that coming up where everything needs to be just in and out of there. So no one really sits with these feelings that often. Everyone will turn on the poker face. And yeah, it took me a while to unlearn that, to be able to say, especially in groups, or to talk about what am I feeling, or whether I'll be open to the fact that I am vulnerable. So I dropped out of my studies, and where I'm from, it the first instinct was to don't tell anyone else that I did that. Say I'm figuring it out, or say something else. Don't let people around know what my actual situation is. Don't let people around know. Don't let the other parents of the other grown-ups in our community know what's up with me. Well, if there's a gathering or something, or yeah. But then it's but then there are so many strides being made now, because most of my family have moved to London now. And yeah, I am exploring these resources with you guys. And yeah, it's been an adventure. It's really been real. And there have been new places. My parents are also younger too. So it is really interesting to me, like the new places we're kind of going in our own lives, but also together with this. Yeah, it's been a couple years now, so that's exciting for me.
For me, I would say culturally similar to you guys. I guess my parents don't really talk about triggers. I didn't really know what triggers was until I think it's the last few years. So on an emotional aspect, it's kind of like bottle it in, just carry on moving, look perfect. Um, yeah, perfection was one thing, like trying to not seem like everything was going downhill, especially in front of other families. So yeah, seeing that triggers, I wasn't aware of what that was. Even anxiety, for example, I wouldn't be able to label it back in the day. So I would experience these sensations, these feelings, these thoughts, and I would just kind of push through. I'd focus on the next thing and kind of managed to get through most of my teenage life that way. And it worked. Kind of modeled other people around me, trying to fit in, people pleasing a lot. And it worked. But I think it's only when I was aware more of my triggers and understood what that thought meant, understanding that the fact I don't have to react to these thoughts, I can just become aware of them, like you said, Gareth, and that was a big thing. So I think culturally, I feel I've been taught to kind of just suppress it, move on, get going, don't have time to kind of think about these negative thoughts. And, the goal is to kind of keep going, get the work done and complete it. So even now I'm thinking about it, I don't think I've ever had a conversation with my mom or dad about negative thoughts or triggers or anything like that. And even them, I see them panicking at times. I've seen them crying in the past, but they just get on with it. It's just, okay, what's next? Just carry on. So they don't even talk about it themselves. Yeah. So I think that's what I've been seen and learned culturally. But I think what's helped me is, I guess, these men's groups. So speaking to other men about it and having that relatability has helped. I think speaking to women about it as well, and it has helped, but I don't think it's helped as much as speaking to other men about it, for me personally. And journaling has helped a lot for me as well. And I think more recently, just kind of learning to sit with that feeling. So like kind of sit with those triggers and see what pops up and see where in my body I feel it, kind of sit with those sensations and being more comfortable with it, and learning to not react to it has helped me a lot as well recently. And I think I've only recently had the courage or confidence to really push myself to do that more and more. And I found that is helping me a lot as well. So I think there's a few different things that's been said. I think the thing that's popped up that I wanted to explore further was, I guess, essentially, there's two components to it, so we can break it down, but essentially, what was your relationship with your father like? And obviously, go in depth as much as you want. You don't have to go in depth either. And in regards to that relationship with your father, how has it affected your personal view on masculinity? I know it's quite a deep conversation, but yeah.
I can go. I would say with my dad, it was nice. I mean, when I was young, he was very loving. He was a very loving dad. I think he enjoyed having kids. So I have a lot of memories. He was a very hard worker. He would go and then leave for work every morning. So we wouldn't really see him at night time. It'd just be more in the morning. And before we'd leave, I remember he'd get us together and give us all a kiss before he left. And I could see that brought him so much joy, that family side of it. So in one aspect, he was also very kind of a principled man. He was very had this moral compass, as you said, Raf, and he really wanted to abide by it. So there was aspects of him which I liked. And then there were sides where, he would get really angry. He'd get quite mad. He'd argue with my mum. He'd shout at us. And there was aspects where I realized as I got older where now I've come to discover is his child wasn't safe. So I was thinking to myself as a kid, like, why are you reacting like that? And behind the facade of anger and whatever it was, there was also this kind of weakness that I couldn't quite put my finger on at the time as a kid, but I sensed that it was coming from a place of, now that I know, fear rather than love. And actually, now looking at it, how masculinity has changed for me was, as I was young, I thought masculinity was all about being the strongest guy, being the most intimidating, or the most logical, ruthless, all of these words to do with force and with the masculine energies. Whereas now, I realize, looking back at it, the times where I was most confident in my father was actually when he was the most loving, and when he exhibited these feminine traits of, as we know now, like collaboration, just care. Because I didn't sense any weakness there, to be honest. It came from a real solid place of strength, of wholeness. There was no acting, there was no mask, there was no cultural conditioning. It was truly what he was aligned with in that moment, what he believed in as a man. And there's something that is so moving about that when I come to these groups and I see the guys like you guys who kind of go through a process and they become more aligned with who they are, and that's how they show up in the world. And there's no mask, there's no acting, there's no subculture that they're trying to be a part of. It's just truly like aligned with who they are. And so I think masculinity has changed massively for me, because now I see it in a far more multi-dimensional way, where it's like, okay, it's not all about being the strongest guy, like the heaviest hitter, or the smartest guy, the most logical, whatever it is. It's far more nuanced than that. And I think mainly it's more authentic, right? It's way more authentic than that. Which has definitely gradually changed over time. But my relationship still with my dad is good. We don't really speak. But when we have spoken, I've kind of blown up at him previously from being angry in the past. We'd always have a polite conversation. I don't know if it's like that with you guys in your culture, but when I speak to my dad, it's always very surface level. How are you? Are you okay? Do you need some money? How's work? And it's very surface level. So finding that authenticity in me also meant that I had to kind of let it out. And I kind of let it out to him in a way where he was very shocked, because I was not speaking to him in our language. I was speaking to him in English, which to him is like, can be a bit surprising, I guess. But at that moment I found my voice, which was the one that now I'm more fluent in, and I could voice a lot of my angers and concerns I had with him. But you know what? Actually, that made him respect me a lot more. But I think, I would like to have a more of an adult conversation. But I find sometimes I don't, in our culture, sometimes a lot of, well, for my dad, I've got to speak from my experience, but I feel like he hasn't grown up in a lot of ways as well. So I don't think he's ready for that level of conversation, which I understand. But yeah, when he's ready, I'm never gonna abandon him. I'll always love him. He'll always be my dad. But it's just interesting how, you can go from one stage to another quite quickly with your father and stuff. But yeah, Castle.
I'll go next. So, for me, I guess growing up, my relationship with my father, I think because my biological father passed away quite early, and then my mum got remarried afterwards, quite young as well. So like, I think it took a long while for me to create that, I guess, that real father-like feeling with my stepdad, who I just call my dad now. And I think we didn't really speak that much. It was more like, it's going to take me here to do an errand, it's going to bring me back, drop me off school, those kind of things. And I guess we didn't really have that close-knit connection for a while. Like, don't get me wrong, loved him, still love him. Like, if anything, over the years, our connection has grew as I've kind of become more aware of my own emotions and stuff. But I think because of that, kind of, I guess the child in me kind of felt like I didn't really have a real father-like figure, if that makes sense. So I think for a long time I was just kind of like modeling people. So I would model him, or like my uncles and other kind of uncles around me. So like that was kind of the pattern. Now I'm starting to realize as I grew up. And I think the way I kind of saw them was kind of just working, getting through life, getting the money to pay the bills. It's a lot of responsibility and no emotion. There's no real emotion. So I think I grew up with the idea that masculinity is all about, working. And I think, especially my teenagers, seeing other people in my year, I think it's more to do with like being popular, fame, all of these kind of things. So I think for a long while that was the case. And although it kind of pushed me to be better myself, I think for a long time I was always kind of curious to see what masculinity really meant. Because especially nowadays, there's so many different definitions thrown around. And I think, like you said, Tanma, it's only since I've started to go into these men's group and talking to other men who have gone through similar experiences, I've started to realize that it really is to do with being authentic, being real to yourself. And I guess there's a sense of like ownership and responsibility over myself, over who I am as a person. And I've taken those thoughts that masculinity is to do with, how I look, how much I earn, being an alpha male, all of these things are no longer kind of pushing me forward anymore. And it's quite nice because now I can take a step back and be like, that's not the person I want to be. And I can focus more on being real to myself, being more authentic, being more grounded, all of these elements, which I feel make me feel more of a man than ever before. But that's me.
So on this topic, so my parents divorced when I was very young, so I didn't really see my dad that much for a while, and then I ended up just seeing him on alternating weekends. But we still had a relationship. I got to know him. But anyway, I grew up largely in my formative years around all females. Whether it was my mom, my aunt, my grandma, all these people, and I didn't really have such a good idea or much of a relationship with what masculinity was. Like, I mostly saw from, like, they did preach to me like what it was supposedly to be, like what my duty was as a man, or what things I saw around me, what other men were doing. And it was a lot of like lack of emotion, just work, just get things done, and just like a lot of dutiful, like whether it was altruistic or what was it, stoic, like that's what I imagined masculinity was going to be, just detached from emotion and productive. Or like, what boxes can I check? Like, when can I get the degree? Can I get the job? Can I get money? Can I support people in my community? Whatever. But it was never about me and a relationship to that concept. I was never, and with my dad, our relationship is definitely growing right now. As now I'm living with him. I've lived with him for a year full. Like, we've never done that before. So I'm grateful about that. But I never really saw other men growing up. Like, I never really saw other men in like that close and personal. I never got to really learn about that stuff from my dad that much. I remember, like, he taught me how to run when I was younger. Like, we'd go running together. That gave me a value. Like, he would talk to me in those limited times I saw him. Yeah. And yeah, like, really something you said, Tanner, like, it was really the best when there was no acting, when there was no mask up of like authority figure, parent, I'm teaching you what you have to do. Like, when that mask was off, like, yeah, that was such a valuable time for me. But really, yeah, because I never really spent that much time around other men growing up, I would say I was definitely guilty of male misandry. Because the first time I walked into a men's group, I was expecting to be talked at or just told what to do, to be preached to. And yeah, I never really could get real with men until like, a year and a half ago, yeah, until after joining these groups. And yeah, most of the people I share what goes up with me is from these groups. And the theme is now it's unlearning. I just say the theme is like letting go of control, letting go of the shoulds, letting go of a lot of expectations, and just hanging out. That just feels like what the theme is for me at this point in my life. Yeah, and that's me.
I heard Tanvir's response, and similarly, I think I can relate. So I have a pretty good relationship with my dad. It's definitely not the best. Like, I've seen kids who have dads where they're like best friends, share everything together, but it's also not very bad. Growing up, my dad was the hard worker in the family. In fact, there was a period of time where me and my sister and my mom actually had to, like, we moved city, and my dad stayed in another city to work. So I think a lot of my younger childhood I was raised by my mom. But I learned a lot of good lessons from my dad. Like, he was always the visionary, like, out of his whole family, his brothers, his sisters. He was kind of the one who was like, I'm going to work on being successful, and he did that, like, he really achieved a great standard of living for himself, and everything it was to provide for me and my sister, which I commend. Like, I'm so thankful and grateful for that. But I think in doing so, there were elements that I learned when I become a father, I want to implement differently. And I think the main one there was the way he overworked. He worked so hard to provide for us and obviously take care of us, but in working so hard, he sacrificed his time with us, right? So it's kind of like, I think something that I've learned around masculinity is we have to learn how to balance both working hard, providing, but also then providing our time, because we don't think that that's important, but it's probably the most important thing. My dad is, as I said, he's come from a pretty poverty background. And so when he created a financial success for himself, that was a big goal in his life, was to make money. And I think something that I've seen differently, and again, it's kind of like we lose what we don't have, right? Like, because he was able to raise me and my sister well, I don't strive for the financial goals as much as he does. So we clash in that regard as well. Like, there was a point in our lives where he really wanted me to take over his business, the family business. However, it didn't really align with my goals and the person I wanted to be. It was kind of like a guaranteed money pot, if that made sense, but I didn't want to do it because it didn't align with the person I wanted to be. We had conflict, during that time. I had to organize a meeting with him. My sister was there as well, tell him that I didn't want to take over the business. It was kind of like, well, what about money? How are you going to make money? And I was like, I'll figure it out. Like, I'm going to be working doing these things. I think for my dad, it was really important that it was about safety. So regardless of what job I do, he just wanted me to be secure financially. And so now, as I'm a bit older and working, doing all these things, he's seeing the success kind of coming through. So I think he's gained a lot of respect for me in that sense. And our relationship is a lot better ever since the divorce, because I think the divorce was like a really big wake-up call for my dad in showing him that to be a man, it's about stepping into femininity as well, because he was very masculine, never cried, never showed emotions except anger. And obviously, when the divorce happened, he was kind of forced to feel sadness. And there was a moment in our lives where I was sitting outside with him one day, And he just started breaking down crying, and he was telling me how, how sad he's been during the divorce and stuff. And when I saw that, it was a moment that changed my life because it made me realize he was human too. And that was probably the moment I respected him the most as well. Since my parents' divorce, our whole family is actually a lot closer, including them in like a healthy way, as weird as that sounds. And I think we're really open now. Like even when I had a mental kind of episode a few years ago, we started to have more vulnerability in our discussions. So now, when I look at masculinity, it was definitely painted by my dad a lot. Now we're kind of painting a new definition together. And I'm realizing that he's just a man learning how to live this life as well. Like he's not this perfect guy anymore. Like what you said, Tanvir, there are elements of him where he's trying to make his inner child just safe again. And I'm seeing that, like he's just a kid deep down. So it's cool, this new dynamic as I'm a bit older, without some readings from him, we can kind of work on being men together as well. But there's room to grow. There's room for improvement. And I think that will just take some time.
Nice. I feel like I could speak about this the whole day, but yeah, I'm aware of time. So I guess one thing that popped up for me when you guys were all speaking is, and I guess it's an assumption on my side, but does fitness, because I know you all kind of work out and you have your own ways of kind of working out, whether it be a sport or gym or activity or, yeah. How does that, with the way that you maintain your physical health, relate to your masculinity? And does it at all? Because it might not. But if it does, how does it relate to your masculinity and how you hold yourself up as a man?
I would say for me, I guess it's about self-confidence and kind of like trusting myself. If I get up in the morning and I force myself to go to the gym, I feel great. Let's say I'm the first one there. No one's turned up because it's really bloody cold. I feel good about myself. Like, hey, I set myself a goal. I set myself a target. I'm here to achieve that. And when I get back to work, I feel good about myself. I spoke about this in one of my group chats actually with my family, and I asked them, I was like, how is it you guys get to a point where you trust yourself more? What is trusting yourself, and how do you do that? And that was purely a performance-based question. And some of the answers were really interesting. One of them was my cousin's new wife. She said she always used to buy herself a treat after school, after a hard week's school. She would go buy herself like a favorite drink. Such a small little reward. And my sister was like, just doing the little things you set for yourself, like drinking water, getting your steps in, going to the gym, whatever it is. Doing those little things will inadvertently build trust with yourself. And the reason I actually asked this was actually my younger brother's in that group chat, and I know he's going through a mental issue with his relationship, with his life, like a massive transitionary period. He's the youngest out of all of us, and I noticed with him, his self-esteem is pretty low right now, and his trust in himself is pretty low. So I kind of put that question there to help him think about these themes as well in his life. And he mentioned that too. He was like, yeah, it's just doing the little things and keeping tabs on the little things. So, so for me, when I was doing those things, I showed up to work different. I came to work a little bit earlier. I sat down, I made myself my matcha, and I had my Barocca in the morning, and I got myself together, got myself going, planned my day. So I think it allowed me to navigate the world in a way from a base of A, I know who I am, B, I know where I want to go, and C, I trust that I can get there. Whereas if my life is a complete disarray, by the time I get to that start line, I'm scrambled. I don't even know if I'm okay from the day before or if I've got issues to sort out or, what I planned. So, that's what it is for me. It's I think going forward, especially now that I'm getting into my 30s, having that base of health and discipline, man, I cannot stop that. I really hope that I continue this for the rest of my life. But yeah, knows it's been majorly beneficial, and it's only been very recent too. Yeah,
I'll go next. I think there's layers to it. What Tanvir was talking about, I think is so inherently true for most humans. Like when we show up for ourselves physically, we feel good, whether that's in our body, in our confidence, even in like our aesthetic, we can't help but feel confident. But I think personally for me, I've definitely noticed how there's another layer beyond that where when I feel like I'm pushing myself physically, I'm kind of diving deeper into my role in the masculine. And I think this applies so differently to everyone else because I do a lot of this work with schools, and a big message that we preach is that we try to create distance between being a man versus being masculine. So being a man is someone who's able to be masculine, feminine, everything from left and right and center, versus masculine are those like traits that we talked about, like aggressive, independent, those kinds of things. And so I think inherently, naturally, I'm quite a masculine guy, which is why I tend to, use sports as a way to express myself physically. Whereas I know other men who are not as masculine, for example, and they actually don't rely on fitness physically, besides just that baseline of health, but they're not trying to prove themselves to be a man by getting stronger. And I guess when we go deeper into it, it could be something within myself where perhaps I need to work on. Is there a part of me that doesn't feel manly enough because I'm not fit, right? And it's really interesting, like as I explore this concept, like, am I working out right now to feel like I'm a man? And I think that's an ongoing question. It used to be a lot worse when I was younger. Like I would try to get really muscly or whatever just so I could fit in with the boys. Whereas now it's a bit of both. But I can't deny that, when I do get fitter and whatever, like a lot of the boys get around it. So it's interesting because it's like, am I still a victim, to the patriarchal norms that we have? But at the same time, I enjoy it, the gym, so it's kind of like finding this balance of putting my self-worth in something physical and doing it for myself, not just to feel good about being a man. If that makes sense.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go now. So it's like, yeah, it really is about connecting to my body, being there for my physical self, where whether I get that blood pumping, I feel my blood flow, that just gets me to feel present. I take care of myself, especially when I'm struggling. Say if I am failing at trying to do this, that impacts my masculinity in the way that I'm there to accept it. I'm there to sit with it. I am there to just get myself there regardless of my performance. And I can still look after myself in the struggle, with the struggle. I remember when I was like in secondary, I started running, and I was running quite a lot. I got my endurance really good. And that's what, I guess, yeah, that even appeased that whole superficial bit where I feel I can stand up straight. I am standing up straight. I felt strong. I felt that, I guess I was just taking care of myself, and I felt grateful to myself for caring for myself. Yeah, I guess that's me.
Nice. Yeah, I relate to all of you. I think for me, now I'm thinking about it, I think I associate, especially when I was younger, working out, being to sport, doing an activity as being something making me a man, making me more of a masculine person. But I think as I've grown up and I started to do different things like dancing, what it's kind of allowed me to do is connect with my body more. And through that connection, I've been able to understand my emotions a lot more better. It's allowed me to be more present, be more grounded. And I think that's the key aspect for me, because by being grounded, it's almost like, oh, I don't have to be in my thoughts anymore. And I think that's the element that makes me feel, I'm whole, I'm perfect the way I am. And it stops me from going into this kind of whole mindset of, what does it mean to be a man? Like when I'm grounded, when I'm present, I feel complete, I feel good. And I think what you touched upon, Gareth, definitely there's that element of like being able to embrace the feminine parts of you. And I think, if anything, being able to embrace the more feminine parts of me has allowed me to feel like more of a man, and really understand the differences of having those kind of feminine and masculine characteristics, for sure. Yeah, I've enjoyed this chat. I think there's a lot we can go more and more into depth with. I guess what we'll do is kind of do a checkout round. And do you guys have any kind of last thoughts going on in your head? Or the other thing is, do you have any questions for anyone else here?
I just want to say thanks for doing this, Jag. I think it's great that there's something like this out there, because I know a lot of Asian men growing up right now. A lot of the things we've mentioned is probably really setting something off in their head, and they didn't really quite have the language or the experience or the understanding to even get close to what we're talking about. So I think it's great you've opened up a massive avenue for some men to kind of figure these things out like we have. But yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you, Jag, for having us. I'm glad we got to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, bro. This is awesome. Like, I think before I stumbled across you, felt like I was, one of the only people talking about these issues. But it's so nice to see that you have the whole community now, all the way across the other side of the world. Even still, the same issue stems in this side of the world as well. So it's a global thing, and I think the more we can shine a light on it, the better we can create, the world for other young brown men growing up. So yeah, thank you so much for doing this and taking the time and creating the space and being a pioneer. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I think one of the reasons why I wanted to do this was to kind of send that message out, especially within the Asian communities as well. So yeah, all of what you guys have said have been really helpful. So yeah, thank you for coming on, sharing your own experiences. Before we wrap up, do you guys have any things that you want to advertise, I guess, or like just share? Like, I know, Gareth, you're doing a few things up in Australia related to men's work and even empowering the Asian communities. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, probably the best way to connect would just be to, connect to the Instagram. I've recently created a community where it's essentially a space for South Asian people, both men and women, but primarily mainly men right now, where we can have weekly calls, basically all about learning new topics around self-development, healing, and also unlearning a lot of those South Asian behaviors and beliefs that perhaps held us back. Within this space, the goal is to create a community where we can just share and talk. And I think, in my life, I've just been a part of very toxic brown culture, and I want to create something that's a healthy brown culture. So, my Instagram will have all the details about it. It's a little community that I've just started. It's very new, so not many people are on it, but it'd be great to get some of you boys on there. If not, just, sharing the message for where it might be. So I appreciate that.
What is Instagram?
So it's Gareth.Shan.
Perfect. Any last words, guys? Good? Cool. Perfect. I will wrap it up. And yeah, we'll see each other, or I'll see you guys in the next podcast one day.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
That was great.